pharmacological interventions in the management of neurogenic bladder. So in the pharmacological management, tricyclic antidepressants. Okay, so though initially developed for the treatment of depression. Okay, so they are initially developed for treatment of depression. So their significant adverse side effect profiles have made them second line agents for that indication. So serious side effects of tricyclic antidepressants exist. So what are the side effects of tricyclic antidepressants? Sedation, orthostasis and cardiac conduction blocks. So the side effects of tricyclic antidepressants are sedation, orthostasis and cardiac conduction blocks. So these drugs, they should be particularly used with caution in older individuals having this neurogenic bladder dysfunction. They should not be used in the setting of pregnancy. The anticholinergic side effects of this class of drugs have been used to reduce bladder detrosartone and neurogenic bladder dysfunction as an off-label. So off-label indications of this tricyclic antidepressants, what does they do? They reduce the bladder detrosartone. Okay, the bladder detrosartone is reduced by this tricyclic antidepressants. So what are the side effects of this tricyclic antidepressants? These are sedation, orthostasis and cardiac conduction blocks. So they should be used with caution in older individuals and they should not be used in the setting of pregnancy. And so these anticholinergic side effects, say they have been used to reduce the bladder detrosartone as an off-label indication. So imipramine, so this not only reduces bladder tone through its strong anticholinergic effects and antispasmodic properties, but it also increases bladder internal sphincter tone through alpha adrenergic agonist effect to further facilitate the urine storage. So imipramine, so this imipramine, so this not only reduces the bladder tone, apart from this, through its strong anticholinergic effects and antispasmodic properties, anticholinergic and antispasmodic properties, but this also increases the bladder internal sphincter tone through alpha adrenergic agonist effect to further facilitate urine storage. So it's both acting on the bladder internal sphincter and also on the reducing the bladder tone. So it's reducing the bladder tone and it's also increasing the bladder internal sphincter tone through alpha adrenergic agonistic effect. So this is facilitating the urine storage. And additionally, imipramine has a local anesthetic effect on bladder mucosa. So what effect it has got on bladder mucosa? It has got a local anesthetic effect on bladder mucosa. So because of the local anesthetic effect, so this will further reduce bladder contractility through spinal reflex mechanisms. So this imipramine, it has got a local anesthetic effect on bladder mucosa. So because of the local anesthetic effect, so it will further reduce bladder contractility through spinal reflex mechanisms. So imipramine thus may be useful to reduce urinary urgency and frequency in uninhibited bladder dysfunction. So what can be used? Imipramine can be used to reduce the urinary urgency and frequency in uninhibited bladder dysfunction, that is whenever there is a stroke or tumor. So amitriptyline has relatively less anticholinergic effects than imipramine. So which has less anticholinergic effects, amitriptyline or imipramine? Amitriptyline. So amitriptyline has relatively less anticholinergic effects than imipramine, yet it is similarly effective in reducing the detrosartan. So the detrosartan, so both it is reduced both by amitriptyline and imipramine. So both are equally effective in reducing the detrosartan, but this has got less anticholinergic effects. And amitriptyline, no, so this has got strong sedation properties, and it may also be helpful in the, so amitriptyline, it has got strong sedation properties and may also be helpful in the treatment of neuropathic pain conditions and insomnia. So strong sedation properties, and this is also helpful in the treatment of neuropathic pain conditions and insomnia. Anticholinergic, anti-muscarinic medications. So this class of medications, no, it reduces reflex involuntary tetrosar activity by blocking cholinergic transmission at the muscarinic receptors, and is the first line option for treating neurogenic detrosar overactivity. So to treat the neurogenic detrosar overactivity, what is used is anticholinergic drugs. So this blocks cholinergic transmission at the muscarinic receptors. So it reduces reflex involuntary detrosar activity. So though available anticholinergic agents have similar efficacy, so these drugs differ in terms of side effects and tolerability based on their muscarinic receptor selectivity and rate of drug distribution. Available anticholinergic agents, no, they have similar efficacy, but these drugs, no, they differ in terms of side effects and efficacy is similar, but side effects and tolerability difference is there. So based on their muscarinic receptor selectivity, depending on the selectivity of the receptors and the rate of drug administration, the rate of drug distribution. So anticholinergic drugs, no, so they bind the M1, M2 and M3 muscarinic receptors, non-selective. They have more side effects than newer agents that are more selective for M2 and M3 receptors. So we have this anticholinergic drugs, no, so they bind the M1, M2 and M3 muscarinic receptors. These are non-selective. They have more side effects than newer agents. So newer agents, no, they are selective for M2 or M3 receptors. Sustained release drug preparations also improve anti-muscarinic drug tolerability by attenuating peak drug serum concentrations. So if we give the sustained release drug preparations, no, so they also improve the anti-muscarinic drug tolerability. So how does they increase this tolerability? By attenuating the peak drug serum concentration. So they will attenuate the peak drug serum concentrations. So non-selective anticholinergic drugs that bind M1 receptors, no, so they may produce memory and cognition impairments. So we have newer drugs, no, selectively for M2 and M3, but this non-selective drugs, no, if they bind to this M1 receptors, no, so this will produce memory and cognition impairments. So memory and cognition impairments are diminished with non-selective anticholinergic drugs. So agents which bind M2 receptors, no, so agents binding M2 receptors, they will cause QT interval prolongation, causing tachycardia and arrhythmias. So agents which are binding these M2 receptors, no, so if any agents which bind the M2 receptors, they can produce the QT interval prolongation, and so this will cause the tachycardia and arrhythmias. And anticholinergic drugs that bind M3 receptors, no, so they will produce visual blurring, xerostomia and constipation. anticholinergic drugs which are binding the M3 receptor. No? So these M3 receptor binding drugs, they produce the visual blurring, xerostomia and constipation. So M2 receptors, QT interval prolongation, tachycardia and arrhythmias. Non-selective anticholinergic agents. So what are the non-selective anticholinergic agents? So these are oxybutynin, tolterodine, trospium chloride. So non-selective anticholinergic agents. So what are these non-selective anticholinergic agents? So these are oxybutynin, tolterodine and trospium chloride. So oxybutynin, no? So this is the first drug approved for treating bladder detrusor overactivity. So if there is any overactivity of the detrusor, so which is used, oxy was the first drug approved. So it's available in immediate and sustained release oral preparations, and also a transdermal and topical gel formulation is available. So oxybutynin, no, first drug for bladder detrusor overactivity, is available in different formulations like immediate, sustained release as well as transdermal and topical gel formulations. And tolterodine, no, so this also comes in immediate and sustained release oral preparations, and this produces less xerostomia and cognitive side effects than oxybutynin. So this tolterodine, no, it produces less xerostomia and cognitive side effects than oxybutynin. And trospium also is available in immediate and sustained release oral preparations. Okay, trospium, okay, trospium chloride, oxybutynin, tolterodine and trospium chloride. So this is also available in immediate and sustained release oral preparation. Since trospium does not cross the blood-brain barrier, so this trospium, no, it does not cross the blood-brain barrier, cognitive side effects are diminished, and it may have fewer drug-to-drug interactions compared to the other non-selective anticholinergic agents. So trospium, no, it does not cross the blood-brain barrier, cognitive side effects. So because it is not crossing the blood-brain barrier, what is happening? The cognitive side effects are diminished, and this will have a fewer drug-to-drug interactions compared to the other non-selective anticholinergic agents. And then we have the anticholinergic drugs which are more selective for M2 and M3 receptors. So they have fewer cognitive side effects than non-selective agents. So anticholinergic drugs which are selective for M2 and M3, they have fewer cognitive side effects than non-selective agents. So what are this? Solifenacin and derifenacin. Solifenacin, derifenacin. So these are more selective for M3 receptors. So what are the drugs which are more selective for M3 receptors? Solifenacin and derifenacin. So these agents may be safer to use in individuals having heart disease, but may tend to produce more constipation than non-selective anticholinergic medication. So M3 constipation is there, no? M2 it will cause QT prolongation. So what are the drugs selective for M3 receptor? Solifenacin and derifenacin. And derifenacin dosing does not have to be adjusted for renal impairment. One advantage of this derifenacin, no, so it does not have to be adjusted for renal impairment. This fesoterodine, okay, one more drug is there, fesoterodine. So this is a competitive muscarinic antagonist, does not appear to cause QT prolongation or cognitive impairments. Fesoterodine, no, so this is a competitive muscarinic antagonist. So which is a competitive muscarinic antagonist? So it is fesoterodine. So it does not appear to cause QT prolongation or cognitive impairment. Imidafenacin, then one more we have imidafenacin, imidafenacin, okay. So this is a selective anticholinergic drug undergoing clinical trials in the United States, but it's available in Japan. So this article is published in 2012. And then trospium or fesoterodone. So they may be better therapeutic options for patients with hepatic impairment. So patients who are having this hepatic impairment, no, trospium or fesoterodine may be better therapeutic options for patients with hepatic impairment since they are not processed by the CYP3A4 system. While derifenacin, no, should be avoided in patients with severe hepatic impairment. So trospium or fesoterodine, better therapeutic options for patients with hepatic impairment. They are not processed by the CYP3A4 system, while derifenacin, no, it should be avoided in patients with hepatic impairment. So in hepatic impairment, derifenacin should not be given. So if bladder overactivity symptoms continue despite a maximum dose of an anticholinergic agent for a month without significant side effects, symptoms are continuing despite a maximum dose, then addition of a tricyclic agent, no, it will provide a synergistic effect in reducing the detrosartan. So if we add a tricyclic agent, no, so this will provide a synergistic effect in reducing the detrosartan. So if symptoms are not controlled with anticholinergics, then tricyclic agent, it will provide a synergistic effect. And Manek et al. Found 63% of persons diagnosed with neurogenic bladder were taking one anticholinergic medication and another 9% more than one. So over a 1 period, neurogenic bladder discontinued their anticholinergic medications and did not restart, while over 80% of patients had interruption of their treatment with these medications. And propivarin. Okay, so one more drug is there. So what is this drug? So this drug is propivarin. Okay, so propivarin is a drug with so this drug has got anti-muscarinic and calcium antagonist properties. Apart from this anti-muscarinic, so this also has got a calcium antagonist property. So this is available in the Europe and Japan. So this has fewer adverse reactions. Fewer means mainly dry mouth and blurred vision. So mainly used for treating overactive bladder. It has been used in spinal cord injured patient, where it increased bladder capacity over 100 cc and improved bladder compliance. But residual urine volume, no, however, it increased from 50 to 87 cc. So propivarin, no, it's an anti-muscarinic and this also has got a calcium antagonist properties. So this is available in Europe and Japan. So this has got a few adverse reactions, mainly dry mouth and blurred vision. Treating overactive bladder, spinal cord injured patients, it increased the bladder capacity, but even the residual urine volume also has increased. Then we have cholinergic agonist. So uricolin is a synthetic muscarinic agonist, okay, with no significant it's just a muscarinic agonist, no significant nicotinic effects. So this is used to promote the detrosar contraction in mixed type A or lower motor neuron lesions. So this will promote the detrusor contraction in mixed type A or lower motor neuron lesions. So urecolin is administered about 1 hour before meals. BP means pudendal nucleus, okay. AD means detrusor nucleus. So if detrusor is there, so it will cause flaccidness of detrusor. So that is why it is used for promoting the detrusor contraction. So urecolin, no, it is administered about 1 hour before the meals and at bedtime as a part of the bladder training program, in which voiding attempts and often manual techniques, Valsalva or Creedy, are performed before the scheduled intermittent catheterization attempts every 6 hours. So because of this is a cholinergic agonist, no? So what will cause? It will cause hypotension, bradycardia, bronchoconstriction, nausea, vomiting, abdominal cramp and diarrhea. And it should be used with caution in persons with asthma, COPD, hyperthyroidism, peptic ulcer disease, intestinal obstruction, urinary tract obstruction, coronary artery disease or Parkinsonism. So this what is this? So this urecolin, no? So they should be used with caution in persons with asthma, used caution in persons with asthma, COPD, hyperthyroidism, peptic ulcer disease, intestinal obstruction, urinary tract obstruction, coronary artery disease or Parkinsonism. And alpha 2 adrenergic agonist. Alpha 2 adrenergic agonist. So this class of medications can be used in neurogenic bladder dysfunction when the internal urinary sphincter is spastic. So if internal urinary sphincter is spastic, what should be used? Alpha 2 adrenergic agonist. So which occurs with detrusor sphincter dyssynergia in upper motor neuron bladder dysfunction. So alpha 2 adrenergic agonist, no, it causes presynaptic reduction of norepinephrine release at central and peripheral adrenergic terminals. So when are these alpha 2 adrenergic agonists used? In neurogenic bladder dysfunction when the internal urinary sphincter is spastic. So this occurs with detrusor sphincter dyssynergia in upper motor neuron bladder dysfunction. What does they cause? They cause the presynaptic reduction of norepinephrine release. Okay, so what does they cause? Synaptic reduction of norepinephrine release at the central and peripheral adrenergic terminals. So it will reduce the norepinephrine release. So since the internal urinary sphincter has alpha adrenergic innervation, so these agents can enhance bladder emptying. So this will enhance the bladder emptying by reducing the bladder neck tone. So these are seldom the sole medication, okay. So because we also have to use so even detrusor hyperreflexia will be there, no. So this also has to be addressed to prevent upper urinary tract damage. So even in the setting of complete or nearly complete bladder emptying, so persistent elevation of detrusor pressures, no. So this will lead to progressive renal damage from hydronephrosis. And this clonidine and tizanidine, no? So these are the alpha 2 agonists that have been used for reducing bladder outflow resistance. So sphincter, internal sphincter. So bladder outflow resistance is reduced by clonidine and tizanidine. So these are the alpha 2 agonists. So these agents also may be used clinically to reduce pain and skeletal muscle tone, which may potentially produce beneficial side effects in treating neurogenic bladder dysfunction. So in spinal cord injured patients, no, so these alpha 2 agonists, no, they also reduce the pain and they also reduce the skeletal muscle tone. So this tizanidine, it is administered orally, and clonidine is available in oral and transdermal forms, and intrathecal administration of this drug has also been studied as a potential treatment modality for refractory neurogenic bladder dysfunction. So tizanidine and clonidine used for reducing bladder outflow resistance. So they are used clinically to reduce the pain and skeletal muscle tone. And common side effects of these drugs. So what are the common side effects of these drugs? So the common side effects of these drugs include fatigue, dizziness, lightheadedness, dry mouth and constipation. Side effects of this alpha 2 agonist: fatigue, dizziness, lightheadedness, dry mouth and constipation. And cardiac dysrhythmias and depression are uncommon, but these are serious side effects. Cardiac dysrhythmias and depression are uncommon but serious side effects. And alpha 1 adrenergic antagonists. So alpha 1 adrenergic antagonists, what are the examples? Dibenzylin, terazosin, tamsulosin, alfuzosin and doxazosin. So they produce peripheral post synaptic blockade of alpha adrenergic receptors in the bladder, neck and proximal urethra to reduce urinary outflow resistance. Dibenzylin, terazosin, tamsulosin, alfuzosin, doxazosin. What does they do? They produce peripheral. So here it is reducing the norepinephrine release. Here it is causing the peripheral post-synaptic blockade of alpha adrenergic receptors in the bladder, neck and proximal urethra to reduce the urinary outflow resistance. So their vasodilating effect on arterial smooth muscle, it produces a reduction in the blood pressure. So they also have this vasodilating effect even in the arterial smooth muscle. So because of this, there is a reduction in blood pressure. Alpha 1 adrenergic antagonist drug side effect profile or similar to alpha 2 adrenergic agonist. Alpha 1, alpha 2 adrenergic agonist. Okay, alpha 1 adrenergic antagonist drug side effects profile similar to those of alpha 2 adrenergic agonist. So what are these? What are the side effects? Fatigue, dizziness, lightheadedness, dry mouth and constipation, and cardiac dysrhythmias and depression are uncommon. And then we have the benzodiazepines. So diazepam and all, no, they are also exert clinical effects. So they bind at a specific site on the GABA-A receptor to potentiate the effects of the inhibitory neurotransmitter GABA. How does these diazepam act? They act at a specific site on the GABA-A receptor. So they act on the GABA-A receptor and to potentiate the effects of the inhibitory neurotransmitter, they bind at a specific site on the GABA-A receptor and to potentiate the effects of inhibitory neurotransmitter GABA. So they bind at spinal and supraspinal sites and they reduce the skeletal muscle tone including the external urinary sphincter. So where are they binding? At spinal and supraspinal sites. Okay, so they are reducing the skeletal muscle tone. So this include the external urinary sphincter. So diazepam has been used clinically to treat external sphincter spasticity from upper motor neuron or mixed type A neurogenic bladder dysfunction. Okay, so from upper motor neuron or mixed type A neurogenic bladder dysfunction, what has been used? Diazepam has been used. So the resulting reduction in bladder outflow resistance, no? So they may allow more complete bladder emptying. So there will be a resulting reduction in bladder outflow resistance will be reduced. Mixed type A, okay, AD tetrusar. Thus, to treat the external sphincter spasticity from upper motor neuron, or it is also used in mixed type A neurogenic bladder dysfunction. So the resulting reduction in bladder outflow resistance, no? So this will allow for more complete bladder emptying. So what are the side effects of this benzodiazepines? Sedation, delirium, respiratory depression, muscle weakness, constipation and blurred vision. So what are the side effects of benzodiazepines? Sedation, delirium, respiratory depression, muscle weakness, constipation and blurred vision. So benzodiazepines can produce physical and psychological dependence. So they also produce physical and psychological dependence. And then we have baclofen. It is the most commonly used drug of this class clinically. Exert its clinical effects through modulation of the GABA B receptors at spinal and supraspinal levels. So these also act at the spinal and supraspinal levels to reduce the skeletal muscle tone. So thus, like the benzodiazepines, baclofen can be used to treat the so if external urinary sphincter spasticity is there, so this is used in neurogenic bladder condition. So baclofen has a clinical advantage over the benzodiazepines. So what is the advantage of baclofen over the benzodiazepines? So it does not appear to cause any tendency towards psychological dependence. So psychological dependence is not seen with baclofen. And baclofen, no, so this can also be administered intrathecally for refractory spasticity conditions, especially where oral antispasticity agents produce excess sedation or other intolerable side effects. So how is it used? It is administered intrathecally for refractory spasticity conditions where oral antispasticity agents produce excessive sedation or other intolerable side effects. And then we have the botulinum toxin. It blocks neuromuscular junction presynaptic vesicle fusion, which prevents acetylcholine release and thus blocks signal transmission. So how does this botulinum toxin act? So this is acting at the neuromuscular junction. So where is it acting? At the presynaptic. So this will stop this presynaptic vesicle fusion. So this will prevent the acetylcholine release and this will block the signal transmission. So and apart from this, so this is also acting on the sensory afferent neurons. Something which is also acting on the sensory afferent neurons, okay, neuromuscular presynaptic, and prevents the excitatory effects of nerve growth factor on bladder function, so which may contribute to its beneficial clinical effects in treating neurogenic bladder. So if we inject this botulinum toxin A into the bladder detrusor or external urinary sphincter, no, it produces a dose dependent weakening of those muscles. So these muscles, no, they have the high concentration of cholinergic nerve endings. So this is mainly for spinal cord injury patients, no. So this will it will produce long lasting improvements in neurogenic tetrusar overactivity, incontinence and quality of life. Okay, so incontinence, tetrusar overactivity and quality of life is improved. So this should be reserved. When should we reserve this? Where oral and transdermal trials of medications, if they have failed, then we can use this botulinum toxin. Okay, mainly spinal cord injury patients. Okay, it affects on sensory afferent neurons. And then So botulinum toxin to first reported to successfully treat the urinary symptoms by injection of external urinary sphincter of spinal cord in the external urinary sphincter, no. So having this detrusor sphincter dyssynergia, so botulinum toxin into bladder detrusor muscle. After this, a decade later, injection into bladder detrusor muscle is done. So in the detrusor and suburothelial regions, so it will produce beneficial effects for up to 9 months. Though up to 70% of neurogenic detrusor overactivity patients may require catheterization after injections due to urinary retention. So whenever there is overactivity, no, they are trying to block the overactivity. If overactivity is blocked, what will happen? This will lead to urinary retention. So to prevent the side effects of this urinary retention, a catheter should be used. So side effects of botulinum toxin injections are low, with a less than 1% risk of developing antibodies to the toxin. And 1%, no, antibodies will be there, and less than 1%, and 1% there is a temporary distant muscle weakness will be there. And approximately 10% of patients do not obtain the desired clinical benefit. So a trial, no, 200 bladder patients, detrusor botulinum toxin, 50% increase in mean bladder volume to first reflex detrusor contraction and maximum. So these benefits, no, they lasted more than 6 months and more cost effective than bladder augmentation surgery over a 5 period if a 40% early and late complication rate of that surgery is assumed. And then we have this opioids, okay. So agonists like classical mu, delta and kappa opioid receptor such as morphine, no. So agonist of the such as morphine interfere with voiding. So if there is an antagonist of those receptors, no, naloxone, they stimulate voiding. So in experimental spinal cord injury animal study, so these has been done there. And we also have this vanilloid solutions, caspacine or RTX, no, they reduce the detrusor overactivity. So these drugs suppress C fiber responses. And so clinical studies have confirmed that intravesicular vanilloid solutions do improve neurogenic detrusor overactivity. So they have been hampered by the lack of stability of vanilloid solutions. Because lack of stability is there, no, so their use has been hampered. And nerve growth factor, urinary nerve growth factor, and nitrous oxide agonist, so offer another avenue for drug development in the future.